Things like what happened at SSL, you know, which is a terrible blot on our record as a country, as an investment destination. Very, you know, there's nobody really who's been held accountable other than one person, and she was a relatively junior employee in the scheme of things. We know that there would be others involved in what has happened there. And you know, our great sprint legend, our icon Usain Bolt, got fleeced, ripped off, millions of US, along with about 200 other people, some of them elderly people who have been devastated by it. And this government has done very little to deal with that situation, you know, because they used to use SSL themselves. Mr. Holness was an investor there. He had an account. He got his money out before it crashed, you know. So the whole thing doesn't smell good, doesn't look good. I'm going to have a commission inquiry into that. We want to know how it is that the FSC, which is a regulator set up by us, we created the FSC when we were in government, not under Portia, but under PJ. And Omar Davis was the Minister of Finance at the time. In fact, I was very involved in the establishment of our FSC because he appointed a working group, a task force. Brian Winter chaired it at the time. I was on it, and Brian and I worked hard on that thing. The legislation was developed and the institution was created. And in fact, Brian Winter was the first executive director of the FSC, and he did a good job, you know, in guiding the industry and strengthening the industry, you know, and that was before he went to become governor of the Bank of Jamaica. So, you know, we are very saddened to see that the FSC didn't handle that situation well with SSL, you know, and we want to know, because the leadership change, you know, of the FSC, the people who were there when we left it, a lot of those people were changed out and other people were brought in. And I must say, you know, I don't think they did a good job. And I want to know what happened. So we're going to have a commission of inquiry into that as well and to see what happened. And the Kroll report, you know, there's this report of will cost the government a lot of money from these forensic auditors, a firm called Kroll, you know, looked into it. And also the FBI were investigating, we were told. And there was a temporary manager, Ken Tomlinson in Jamaica, who was managing the thing after it crashed. He must have issued a report as well of his stewardship. None of these things have been made public. We've been calling for them to be made public. We want to know exactly what went on.
We learned the other day, according to a report from the US, that our financial investigative division that is set to go in depth where it concerns financial crimes, they are grossly understaffed. They are silent on this SSL saga. We keep coming back to this SSL saga, and as I stated, is we, the social media warriors, is the layman on the streets that supporting that the investors whose money was stolen get back their money. Mark Golding says when he forms the next government, they will have an inquiry. We cannot get that SSL report. We cannot get the Kroll report that the taxpayers' money paid for. Even the former finance minister stated before he left how disappointed he was. The director of public prosecution, Paula Llewellyn, heard his statement and said that she's not going to move any faster and that they have to take their time. And it's been 2 years and counting. But I'm going to let you hear a recording from the trustee as it pertains to this whole SSL and them coming up with $500,000 after it was said that almost $5 billion were stolen from over 200 clients, 200 investors at the Stocks and Securities Limited. But we seen where the FSC had gotten control of SSL right after we learned of that massive fraud where our icon Usain Bolt money was a part of that was stolen. He invested some $6 million there. And they brought him down to his knees. He gave an interview saying that he thought where he was at on the food chain, they would have dealt with him better. But he got a wake-up call. And me tell you already, I want to go find the book that says too black to succeed, no matter how much money you will ever have. Some people, they will look at you and look down on you because of the color of your skin. So they must say to themselves, say, well, this is a country boy I do with so much money. Didn't they see the hard work that he put in to acquire his funds? Sleepless nights, hours and hours, days, years of training to acquire his wealth. We seen how Usain Bolt got his wealth. We witness it. We know how a Mark Jefferson Golding acquired his wealth. We are not sure how this prime minister has gotten so rich, so rotten rich, so real rich. But I want you to listen to this interview from Trustee Kion Campbell, whom the FSC took to court because he was the trustee at one point and they wanted to regain for themselves. When they have failed miserably, they failed to keep the suspension that was put in place under the People's National Party when it comes to SSL. It was lifted under this government's watch. And so why are they fighting to keep control of SSL when they had received 1 million and they didn't bother to even pay the investors who money was stolen? They went ahead and spent it up and pay other staff members and don't even care about the investors whose money was stolen. Right? But Kion Campbell dropped some very important, information in this interview. And he basically let us know that it's not all 200 clients or investors who are going to get back anything from this 78 million that he has on hand. And that it's grim, it looks dire. He doesn't know if they're going to retrieve any more money or be able to recuperate any more money to give out. And the bombshell of it all is that they're saying the money that was recouped basically is for those who was defrauded by Gene and Panton. And it was said, and somebody can correct me if I'm not saying it correctly, but it was said that Gene said she didn't touch Usain Bolt money. So if the trustee is saying all of this, that means Usain Bolt now have $1 to get out of this 78 million here. But I want you to listen to this for yourself and listen to what the trustee told Simon Crosskill. This is very important.
That seems like a drop in the bucket to me.
Well, it is, yes, but it is what we've been able to recover by a mechanism that would have been implemented following the resumption of my duties after the May 31st, 2024 ruling by the Supreme Court.
So when you talk about these funds, this involves selling computers, desks, whatever assets the company had?
No, well, this was really a management fee mechanism that we use. You may recall that in September 2023, SSL received an insurance payout
of $1 million US.
$1 million US. Now, those funds were utilized during the temporary management. So when I resumed my duties, those funds were fully depleted. I have sought a mechanism to recoup some of that funds to be able to make a distribution to the actual victims of the fraud.
Before I move on, you mentioned that $1 million US, and I remember the Minister of Finance then suggesting that the government now wouldn't have to pay staff, they would use that money. Why wasn't that money directed to the victims?
Well, that question is best directed to the former temporary manager and the FSC. My approach would have been to earmark those funds for the victim, which is why I've sought to recover some funds to put into that pool. So I basically started from zero and built up to this $500,000, whereas at that point they had the 1 million and it was utilized to pay staff and other temporary management expenses.
But weren't you a trustee at that time?
Yes, I was a trustee at that time, but the court, you may recall,
Yes.
the Financial Services Commission applied to the court and got an injunction which prevented me from discharging my duties as trustee.
And that was overturned by Justice Batts?
Well, it was not so much overturned. He confirmed my appointment,
Okay.
that my appointment was valid, and ended the temporary management.
How many claimants are there who are going to seek some compensation from this fund?
All right, so this is specifically for those persons who may have been defrauded by the activities of Ms. Gina Panton, who is before the court, as we know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just specifically those. And based on information available to me, I anticipate it will be less than 100, maybe closer to 50, but we will see.
Have you been able to claw back any of the funds from the accused?
No.
Wow. How did the 500,000 come about?
All right. As I indicated, the temporary management team, they utilize certain funds, both from the insurance proceeds and from what we will call the proprietary estate of SSL, and perform services that benefited what we refer to as the off-balance sheet unaffected claimants. So there are some services that SSL is still required to perform for certain clients. During the temporary management, those clients who were able to complete their arrangements during the temporary management did not have to pay a fee, but it meant that the burden of the cost then fell on the victims, because the funds that could have been used to make a payment to the victims was used to cover the expenses. So the beneficiaries during the temporary management absorbed none of the costs. And what we have sought to do is to sort of rebalance the position so that at least there's some pool of funds available to the actual victims. So the victims now have a pool that they can participate in. It's small, granted, but it's a start.
It does seem like, with people like Bolt losing billions, it's like getting bulla for your birthday cake. Kadian, in terms of the amount of money that you've been able to gather so far, why not more? Why isn't there more available?
Well, the base from which we have recovered the funds, the client base is certainly far less than during the temporary management. A significant number of the clients, as I would have indicated, they got the benefit of the temporary management, so to speak, but they did not have to absorb any of the cost of that temporary management. So the burden fell on a smaller pool of clients. So that's part of the challenge now. It's really a smaller pool of clients also that have to bear the obligations of getting back their estate, the money from the estate and so on, including the victims. So it's limited what we can recover.
Could there be more to come?
Well, we are making every effort, but we are making no promises at this time. The situation does look dire, but we are making every effort to see what additional funds can be recovered.
Why did it take so long to get to this stage in terms of a fund, a compensation fund, as small as it may be? Why did it take, over 2 years?
Well, you would have to break that into two. During the temporary management, a particular approach was taken, and they decided that the insurance proceeds would not be used as a victim compensation fund, as I would have used it if I was allowed to at the time.
So they got it wrong?
Well, I suppose they are going to say that they have a different perspective and they could have done that. I disagree.
And did you disagree at the time?
Well, remember, I was injuncted from taking any role in SSL. The court had implemented that injunction